Welcome to the Hearing Wellness Journey podcast, an exploration of determination, hope, self-discovery, and triumph. We'll share the personal experiences of those that are living with hearing loss and provide a haven for their stories to show others that they are not alone in this journey. Please welcome your hosts, Dr. Dawn Heiman and Lindsey Doherty.
Welcome everybody to our latest edition of the Hearing Wellness Journey podcast. We're very excited for this specific episode. It's a little bit different than what we've done in the past.
Yeah, so I received an email from a son of a former patient who has passed away. And he said he wanted to share his dad's story, but he was just going to type it up. So we believe that everyone should be aware of the fact that if someone has a hearing loss, that there can be side effects of not treating it. And what we're going to talk about today are worst case scenario, but it's something to be aware of and give people some knowledge about why it's important to do something about your hearing. It's bigger than someone saying, I don't want anyone to know that I have a hearing loss. We see it mainly caregivers or adult children that schedule the appointment for someone that was in denial, but they're really struggling. And it's not like they've been struggling for 2 weeks. They've been struggling for a decade or more. And it's now become that bad where they are exhibiting behaviors that are not a great thing, like their personalities are changing. And so we want to talk about that today. Lindsey, do you have a copy of the letter?
I have that letter. So I'm going to go ahead and read that out loud to everybody so that they can hear in the adult son's words, because our patient is no longer with us, but he wanted to share his experiences. So without further ado. Hello, Dr. Dawn. I would like to share the story of what you did for my father. My father died about a month before COVID, but because of your work, my father was able to talk to his granddaughter in California and his brother in London a few hours before he died. The story of you working with my father to clean his ears and to get him a hearing aid is something for which I have a very fond memory of during his last years. Before we went to your office, his quality of life was pretty miserable. He could not hold a conversation, and he had no interest in listening to Beethoven. The first visit to you dramatically changed the remaining part of his life, and I will always be indebted to you for this. To further explain things, let me tell you a little about my father. He was born in Germany, and as his father was Jewish, he was a refugee from the Nazis and moved to England in 1938 when he was 9, very late. I am not lying about this, and it is not that big of a deal, but his father was the doctor of Anne Frank's family in Frankfurt before they left for Holland. My father liked peace and quiet and became a well-known nuclear physicist, but he loved to listen to operas and to Beethoven's symphonies. When somebody disturbed him, he would scream, "Please be quiet." He had an accident and had dementia for about the last 10 years of his life after the fall. His hearing was bad even before his accident, and he had a hearing aid that he lost. Before we visited you, he refused any new hearing aid. When we had our first visit with you, I remember how you somehow got him to agree to have his hearing aid and ears cleaned. I remember when he was in your office and he shouted, "Please be quiet," when you tested the hearing aid. It was really wonderful to hear these words. In the next few years, he did not like to get out of the house very much, but when I told him about an appointment with you, he was always very willing and happy to go. I now listen to Beethoven myself and think about how the most amazing piece of music in the world, the Ninth Symphony, was composed when Beethoven was deaf. I can't get over the story of Beethoven facing the orchestra when the symphony was first played and not realizing how much the crowd was applauding until somebody turned him around. I just really wanted to thank you again, Ed.
That was so cool to read because I remember when this man was first brought to me, he was not happy. He was in the office. He was in a wheelchair. He had, if you could imagine, he had a big bushy mustache, full hair, and those like 80 dad's glasses,
Mhm.
and questioned everything. What are you going to do to me? Because he couldn't hear what I was saying to him. And I had to somehow visually get in front of him and reassure him, calm him down. His ears were packed with wax. And I don't know how I did it, but to relay his fears, to let me do something. He start to go in his ear, what are you doing? And he can't hear me as I'm trying to clean out his ears. And then to get him to take the hearing test was a challenge, getting him in the sound booth and all that good stuff. And then I remember he distinctly brought it up or said something about how, and he's not going to wear any hearing aids or something. So he was wheeled back out into the lobby, into our waiting area, and his son and I were chatting. And I said, do you mind if and I'm whispering because I know he can't hear I know the degree of the hearing loss. And I said, do you mind if I go set a hearing aid real quick? And then I'll just bring the laptop out here and I'll just put it on his ear and see what happens. Because the man was learning to trust me. So I went, set a hearing aid because he had no hearing on one side and a very severe hearing loss on the other ear. Brought it out, got him to relax. And I said, I'm touching his ear. I'm like, can I just touch your ear? Can I just, and I'm trying to engage with him. And I slipped the hearing aid over his ear and into his ear, and then continued to just talk to him. And suddenly he started to wake up. It was like we had engagement. We weren't just looking at each other. We were talking.
Mhm.
And his first reaction, like his son said, when I was like, how does that sound? He's, please be quiet. So apparently he liked to listen to music. And if anyone in the house was talking at the time, now you have to imagine, this man was a genius. He was a physicist, worked at the University of Chicago, helped create like some major things. And so when he listened to music, he was all in. So you can imagine being his child growing up. And when Beethoven's playing, you better be quiet. So I start talking and he's, please be quiet. He hadn't heard in so long. And it was sweet how he would come in and he would let me clean his ears. He would let me clean his hearing aids, and we'd have little chats and stuff like that. And it's nice to hear that he looked forward to coming to my appointments because he lives not far from our office. And I used to say, I'm right here in Woodridge. It's okay. You don't have to get him in. He had a caregiver. His son bought a special van to bring him over. And I said, I'm more than happy to come to you and to clean your ears or clean the hearing aids. I can come. The son would be traveling and I would say, no big deal. Or however it came about. I'm like, you don't need the caregiver to bring him. And he's like, no. Trust me. He enjoys this. He needs to get out. So they would take him on a field trip to come to the audiologist.
Ah.
But he wasn't the only one. Like we've had so many people that are struggling. The families are worried. Their parent is disengaged. They seem sad. They're curmudgeon. They, a little bit combative, or they're just confused. And we get to see them like wake up after the wax is removed, after the hearing aids are fit.
And it has to be scary for them. Let's say that the patient does have dementia, like this gentleman, and to, first of all, probably realize something's going on. I do remember that with my grandma, where she knew she had dementia. She knew she wasn't processing everything, but then to not have clear understanding, that has to be so challenging and really make people paranoid and hard to earn their trust.
Yeah, there was a woman who called, scheduled an appointment years ago, and her dad was the patient. She wanted to schedule an appointment with him. They had just finished an appointment with the primary doctor who said, I think you should do something about his hearing. And I had never heard this term. I don't know if the daughter got it right or not, but she said he had been diagnosed with combative dementia. She said, for example, when I was in the appointment with him, the doctor had said something or he had slipped up in what he had said. And he was like, whoops, I didn't mean to say that. And he and the daughter laughed about that. Dad didn't know what was being said. And suddenly he was angry, saying, stop laughing at me. Stop making fun of me. He assumed that because they were laughing, they were laughing at him because he didn't know what was being said. He had hearing aids from Costco. So he was wearing hearing aids. They knew he had a hearing loss, but he was just so out of it, and it was getting bad because he was being combative with nurses at the community that he lived at, and he was not nice to his daughter. He was just, he had lost all control of his life, basically. He couldn't hear, and he has dementia. So anyway, she brings him in. I try to take a history with him, asking him, where did you work? What's your life like? And all. He had no idea what I was saying. And he was just like yelling at me, asking me why he's here, or please don't touch me, and all this kind of stuff. So I was able to get him into the sound booth. I was able to like relax him. The hearing aids, we took them out. They weren't really doing anything for him. I was able to test his hearing and then bring him back out. And I told the daughter, I just need 10 to 15 minutes. So they just sat in silence while I took a pair of demo hearing aids and I programmed them. And then I put them on his ears. And this was in our Oak Brook office, Lindsay. This was like 2013 or something. And I put the hearing aids on his ears and I started asking the same questions that I had started with when he first arrived.
Okay.
Have you ever worked in background noise? And right away he goes, yeah, I was a janitor at the high school for 30 years. I was in the boiler room. I fixed stuff. I was always using power tools. And this man answered my question right away. There wasn't a delay.
Mm-hmm.
His whole demeanor changed. He was no longer like angry and suspicious. He was just a normal man having a conversation with someone else.
It just
he was
unlocked.
Lovely after that. Lovely. Right away, his daughter was behind him and she's just like tearing up. Oh my gosh, this is a new person. Whenever we can't hear, we can be paranoid. We can have more arguments with our family members. We make assumptions. If you're being told that, imagine if like you're at a memory care community, right? And the staff is going to bathe you, let's say once a week or something. Or every night they come in to help you change your clothes. They're there to help you. But if you can't hear what they're saying, you feel like you're being violated.
Sure.
That's when the combativeness comes in. If you can't hear, or if the person who's working with you isn't educated enough to think, okay, I'm going to get in their line of sight. I'm going to show them what I'm going to do and why I'm here. And it's all good, because you would want to put your jammies on before you go to bed. But if that's not happening and they just come in and they're assuming they can't hear me anyway, I'm just going to start ripping this shirt off. That's where it becomes a big stress. And if you're not ready to go to bed because you wanted to read for another few hours and no one's discussing this with you and giving you a choice, that's when it becomes really sad. There was another woman that was at a senior community. They've since changed their name, but they had, Lindsay, you and I were talking about this the other day about like, why do I think someone had called and they said she's in such and such a wing. And you were like, well, does that make a difference? And I was like, it depends on where they are at, but sometimes it does make a difference, because in this one place, they called them neighborhoods. Each wing was a different neighborhood. And the person wouldn't know why they were moving to a different neighborhood. They just knew they were moving to a different neighborhood. And it was the level of care that they needed for the dementia. Yes. So there was this one woman that was in the severe wing. Most of these people, their beds are very low to the ground so that they don't fall out, they don't get hurt. They might have special alarms that are connected to them so they don't flee, or they don't even get up out of their seat without someone knowing. And usually in that area, they know the patients are no longer speaking. Like their brains have disorganized, shrunk, who knows what's going on. So I was asked to please come in and see this one woman. The daughter was concerned, wanted to know, can we do something about her hearing? We feel like that maybe she has even a little bit of a hearing loss. And she had heard that there can be a link between hearing loss and dementia. So I went and her ears were impacted with wax. Now, some people can say, why didn't they just go to an ENT one fell swoop? And it can be really stressful for the resident when they need to be transported and taken to a doctor's appointment, especially if they don't understand what's going on. It can disrupt their lives for days after spending all day. It's very stressful for the family and anyone from the community who helps this person transport to the doctor's office. So anyway, I took it upon myself. I'm like, it's okay. She's impacted with wax. I worked with the nurses and the attending doctor to be like, okay, we're going to put drops in her ears and I'll keep coming back. So I came back 3 different times to try to get all of the stuff out of her ears. After the 3rd time, so imagine like having really hard, permanent earplugs in, how you hear. After I got everything out, I then was able to test her hearing. And she had a moderate to severe hearing loss. So moderate to severe meaning that at the level I'm speaking right now, my average level was a whisper to her, if not softer. So you have that degree of hearing loss where you aren't really, when someone whispers, you can't hear them at all. When they speak at a normal level, it's as if they're whispering. Then you add in these earplugs. Imagine how much input you're getting with sound. She was getting pretty much nothing. She was at a deaf level with the degree of hearing loss she had. I called the daughter, let her know, here's what I found, sent reports to everybody. And the daughter said, can we do something? And I said, sure, we can try to fit her with hearing aids, see if that helps. If it doesn't help, if it doesn't make a difference in her life, you can just give back the hearing aids. And she agreed. She said, definitely order her the hearing aids. And we scheduled a time for me to fit her at the community in the doctor's clinic while the daughter would also be there. So okay. I fit her with the hearing aids, put on her ears and things like that. And I looked over at the daughter who was behind this woman and I whispered to her and I said, go ahead, you talk first. And I remember this so well. She goes, Mom, is the sky green? And sharp as a tack, right away, the woman said, I hope not, because that would mean there would be a tornado coming. And both of us, our jaws dropped and we're like, oh my gosh. There was no delay whatsoever. This same woman was not combative dementia. She was more what I would say, she was a social person. Because when I would go in to try to clean out her ears and talk to her, and I would just try to make things light and reduce any kind of anxiety, trying to show her what's going on, I would start saying stuff and she would start saying things. So I'd ask her a question and then she would just say, the birds, aren't the birds so pretty? Or, oh, those flowers. She would just talk to talk because she was social. She had no idea what I was saying, but she was just trying to be a part of the conversation, inappropriately responding. Suddenly, she's hearing better. That same day, I rounded on 2 more people as I was leaving, and then they had to buzz me out to get out the front door. And as I'm waiting, I wave to the receptionist, and I feel a tap on my shoulder. And I turn and I look, and the daughter's standing there with tears in her eyes. And she said, thank you so much for bringing my mom back. I haven't had a conversation with her like that in over 10 years. We got to have lunch together. It was amazing.
Wow.
Our ears have such a great impact on our brains, on our lives, on our social abilities. And sometimes the dementia is, let's say, Alzheimer's disease, and it's not just forgetfulness. There's more to it. But even with Alzheimer's, like the gentleman that you read the letter about, it makes a difference when they have good days and bad days. If they can have a conversation with a family member in California or London, if they can hear the Beethoven again,
yes,
the quality of life is improved with the hearing. Regular ear cleanings makes a difference. I have 2 more stories, but I think we're probably going pretty far into this. I could talk forever.
There's so much, because you're unlocking when the hearing component is repaired, you're unlocking this part of your brain. It reminds me of a secret garden where all of a sudden this door opens and it's gorgeous, and the lights shining down, and because they get to be that person that they are, they get to be part of the conversation, they get to remember times and have these talks with their family members. It's hard when they don't remember their family members' names, and they're locked away and nothing can help jog that. But when they can hear again, they start to become part of that old selves.
Yeah. And even if they start reminiscing about their mother when they were 8, at least they can, if they're in that place and time, and the family members that's with them says, "Oh, really? What did grandma like to cook?" And they're like, "Oh, she always made the best cookies." Like, just go there with it, wherever they are in their place and time. But to be able to converse back and forth, it doesn't matter, are you in the past or are you in the present? They can hear, and
Yes.
you can enjoy being with them and they can enjoy being with you. But
You're activating the brain, which otherwise was just sitting there.
can you imagine being in a senior community and you're being parked
Ugh.
in a certain area with everyone else with their wheelchairs? You can't hear the TV. You can't hear the person next to you. You're just, and maybe you didn't even put your glasses on that day, or the glasses are not working so great. How sad. If you could at least put hearing aids on and they're playing music and you recognize the song, or you can watch the program or the show and be a part of that happiness is a big deal.
Talk to the person next to you, across the hall from you, anybody
Yeah.
walking.
Meet your neighbors, say
Yes.
hi, ask what the weather's like. Simple stuff makes a big difference, definitely. So there are studies that show that even with a mild hearing loss, our brain is already starting to reorganize, and it's putting effort, the energy that maybe isn't being used sometimes, into other facets of our brain, like the visual lobes. Because if you're not trying to listen and you're using your eyes a lot, you're going to reorganize and put that. People are always asking, how can I be younger? How can I do more for myself? And they say, go for walks every day, eat healthy, keep your ears going, keep stimulating that brain, listen to music that you love.
Yes.
Is a big deal. Have your hearing tested so that you at least have a baseline. If something changes, we can get the treatment going faster, knowing, oh yes, this has not always been here. Let's do something about this. If it's a younger person and they've had a sudden change in their hearing, the recommendation would be to send you to a specialist to be given steroids. Sometimes it comes back. If we know, yes, this is not you, let's do something sooner than later, it's a great thing. But even if it is permanent and the change is there, let's correct it so that the brain is consistently stimulated. And then you get to go out more.
Yes. And even dementia or Alzheimer's, they might not remember the conversation that they had, but their brain is activated and it's being used. And overall, it can affect their daily attitude, where maybe they're not so combative, but because that time was spent, they were able to utilize their secret compartment, their secret garden. They can just have a better quality of life.
Yep. So if you know of anybody that is struggling, they don't want to go out, they don't want to hold a conversation with you, they seem to be slipping socially, cognitively, start with a hearing test. The Mayo Clinic and Rush University Medical Center, all these places, if you go make an appointment with the dementia clinic, they're going to require you have the hearing tested first, because you could be misdiagnosed. Or we need to know what is happening. If the hearing has shifted, don't do any of the testing yet until the hearing has been corrected, or the person who's giving all these cognitive tests can give the person a pocket talker, let them turn up the volume enough so that it's fair. and then move forward. You wouldn't ask someone to please read this newspaper if they have vision problems. You would get them glasses and then help keep them engaged and have them read stories.
Yes.
So.
That's great.
Yeah. I think obviously we're trying to eliminate the negative stigma regarding hearing loss. We're trying to bring joy to people's lives and showing how your ears are directly connected to your brain and it can change your outlook on life, improve your quality of life.
Mm-hmm. Regardless of what stage you're in your life.
It's never too late.
Right. Never too late. Even if you are in that wheelchair and you're at a senior community and you're not out partying or dining in restaurants, it's never too late because you're still able to be social and have conversations.
It's never too soon. Even if you're 45 and you're struggling and you're choosing to not go to the party or hang out with friends because you worked construction, you're an avid hunter or whatever, it doesn't matter. You're a wickedly great musician, but your ears are changing. Do something sooner than later. That's what the Lancet study says. Hearing loss is one of 9 modifiable risk factors for dementia. So do something about your ears. So we'll catch you next week. We have a new story coming, and I'm just really thrilled that you're listening, and I hope that you learned something great today.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Hearing Wellness Journey podcast. For more information about what we do and the services we provide, please visit our website at hearingwellnessjourney.com/podcast, where you can find more resources based on today's discussion, as well as request to be a member of our Hearing Wellness Journey community on Facebook. That's available for our listeners exclusively on hearingwellnessjourney.com/podcast.